Let's get prehistoric. If my niece have anything to say on the matter, I'm already there despite being in my late 20s. Friendly reminder to do yourself a favor. Go touch grass, stay active. Otherwise, you end up like me, who has achy, breaky knees that creak when I bend down and stand up. But that's enough about Espresso Shaka. We're not here to talk about me. We're here to talk about Mamoswine. This thing is a four-legged wrecking ball with base 110 HP, 130 attack, 80 defense, 70 special attack, 60 special defense, and 80 speed. As far as our abilities go, we have Oblivious, Snowcloak, and Thick Fat. Oblivious is probably the best ability here on Mamoswine. It protects us from being distracted mid-battle by becoming infatuated with the opponent, so we don't have to worry about losing a turn that way. We can focus on doing as much damage as possible. On top of that, it also protects us from Taunt. While Mamoswine doesn't typically want to run status moves, one nice thing about this is we don't have to worry about our Protect getting shut down. Protect is a relatively handy move to have on Mamoswine because that base 60 special defense is not doing us any favors despite the base 110 HP, so we can dodge some heavy hitting special attacks coming our way, and then hopefully Mamoswine's partner can remove the source of these special attacks from the field, whether it's a straight up knockout or a phasing move, so that could be relatively handy. But the most important thing about Oblivious is it protects us from Intimidate, meaning that base 130 attack stat is going nowhere. The Intimidator just comes in like that. Meanwhile, Mamoswine with Oblivious is like, hi, friend. Okay, I hit you now. Bye. Like, I just picture Mamoswine being like Turvish from Disenchantment with the Oblivious ability, and to be honest, Turvish might even be my favorite character from that show. So, anyways, I just picture Mamoswine just doing that, so like I said, Oblivious might be the strongest ability here because of that combination. Now, as far as our other abilities go, we do have Snowcloak, which raises our evasion one stage in the snow, which, while that could be relatively handy, it's also a dice roll that I am not willing to take with this sweeper here. If we're ranking them in best of three, Snowcloak's probably the third of three abilities, so probably not the best to run on here. Our final ability here is Thick Fat. So, if Oblivious is the best, Snowcloak is the worst, I'm going to put Thick Fat here at number 2. And basically here, it reduces the damage of fire and ice type attacks, which can be relatively nice. While Mamoswine doesn't have the greatest defensive typing, being able to have half damage from fire type attacks, especially fire type attacks since we're weak to fire, and ice, that could be relatively nice. And if you do terastallize away from ice ground into a type that does, say, resist both of those, that can make you relatively bulkier against something that would try to counter Mamoswine. Now, let's talk about the typing. Ice Ground is a phenomenal offensive typing. It hits a lot of things super effectively as well as neutrally. If we jump into PokemonDB.net and run Ice and Ground, this is all of what resists us for every single Pokemon. So obviously we don't hit Shedinja. We also have Surskit, Dewpitter, Araquanid, Wimpod, Gliscod, Snom, and Frostmoth. So that's the only combination of things that outright resist ice and ground, which is relatively nice. If you wanted to throw, like, say, a fire type Tera Blast on there, you get rid of every single one of them as well. So that could be relatively nice. If you wanted to run a rock type move, same idea. If you wanted to run grass, well, that's what grass gets you. But anyways, we'll touch on that in a little bit. So let's talk about the defensive combination of Mamoswine's ice ground typing. We don't have much going in our favor. We are immune to electric and we resist poison. That's it. We're weak to water, fire, grass, fighting, and steel, all of which are relatively common types. So being able to terastallize is probably going to be a good idea for a Mamoswine, and then that way we can gain some more resistances that way. So let's talk about some Tera options. And keep in mind, Tera Blast is definitely a viable move if you're going to run Mamoswine as a terastallized attacker. So just keep that in your back pocket. So what can we do with some Tera options here? Well, if we wanted to double either one of our stabs, we could go ice or ground. That could be relatively handy for doing maximum damage. Ice would also give us a 50% defense boost in the snow as well, but I'm not really leaning towards Tera Ice on Mamoswine. I'm actually leaning a little bit more towards either fire, steel, grass, or water. So let's talk about those four typings right here. Fire, it gives us a burn immunity, which protects us from having our attack lowered. And on top of that, it covers a lot of Mamoswine's regular weaknesses right here. It resists fire, it resists grass, and it resists steel. It's still weak to water, so you do have to be careful that way, but you're also neutral to fighting. That could be relatively handy. And as I showed you in PokemonDB.net, a fire-type Tera Blast would really help Mamoswine with the coverage as well. So that is a thing. We could also go Seal, which would make us immune to poison-type attacks. We don't have to worry about Glamora with its toxic debris setting toxic spikes, and on top of that, Steel-type coverage would hit Glamora super effectively as well. And if we just happen to have Mamoswine in the back and it's already terastallized, we could sub it in on the toxic spikes and not have to worry about it getting poisoned that way too. So that could be relatively nice. We do have Tera Grass as an option as well, which gives us a powder immunity. It also covers our water and grass weaknesses. And one really awesome tool that Mamoswine did get this generation is Trailblaze, which does increase its speed. So that can make Mamoswine really scary with a speed boost. Finally, we have Tera Water. Water covers the steel, fire, and water weaknesses. You're still weak to grass, so you do have to be careful about that, but you're only weak to grass and electric at this point. So having Tera Water could be a viable option on Mamoswine as well for a Tera option. So let's talk about some moveset ideas. So our first set here I was thinking is a Life Orb, Oblivious Attacker. We're going to run Icicle Crash, High Horsepower, and Trailblaze. Additionally, we're going to run Protect. So here's what happens. Trailblaze increases our speed one stage. Mamoswine has a great base 130 attack to take advantage of Trailblaze. So EV wise, what we're going to do is we're going to go with a Jolly Nature and use 236 EVs to bring us up to 143. At +1 speed, this allows Mamoswine to outspeed Dragapult and Slower. That is nice. That is most of the game right there that we are able to outspeed. And don't even get me started on the fact that we could pair this with Tailwind as well. So we have that to be able to outspeed at +1, and then that way we need very minimal investment to outspeed most of the game. We have max attack on this thing to hit 182, and then the remaining points are just put into our bulk. So we have 12 into our HP to hit 187, and then 1 extra point into both our defense and special defense to bring us up to 101 and 81. So what we have here is we have Icicle Crash and High Horsepower to hit most of the game. We have Trailblaze to get our speed. You could alternatively switch High Horsepower out with Earthquake, and then that way you do have a spread option as well. Base 100 power is nothing to slouch at, especially if you did want to go Terra Ground for double stab on either Earthquake or High Horsepower. Icicle Crash is nice too because you do have really good flinch odds at 30% of the activation rate, so that's relatively nice. And then we also have the Life Orb here to also increase our firepower a little bit more at the cost of a little bit of our HP. So that's what I was thinking for the first set. We go Life Orb to increase our firepower, we have Trailblaze to boost up our speed, we have Protect to keep ourselves relatively safe, and Earthquake and Icicle Crash to just hit things really hard. A redirection setter like Follow Me could be very helpful for Mamoswine to get that initial speed boost, and plus, while Trailblaze is relatively weaker at base 50, you're still doing a little bit of chip damage, so if your opponent does have a Focus Sash user, you could use Trailblaze to break the sash and then hit it harder with either High Horsepower / Earthquake for your ground coverage or Icicle Crash. Now, our next set here is a Choice Band set. So we're going to drop Trailblaze because we're locking ourselves into one move at this point. Mamoswine does get Knockoff, which is a great move to put in Trailblaze's place. So having dark coverage in addition to ice and ground means you hit everything either neutrally or super effectively. You don't have to worry about anything just outright walling this combination. So Knockoff is great here because we do have the ability to remove items, so items do tend to make things a little bit more annoying to deal with. We can remove that. We also get a 50% boost in power to Knockoff when we do remove that. We have High Horsepower for great single target ground type coverage. We have Icicle Crash as well, which is great physical single target ice coverage. We do have that, but most importantly, we also have Ice Shard if we're worried about things that are faster than us. Because we don't have Trailblaze on Mamoswine, we are working at that base 80 speed, and even with max investment, that only puts us up to 145. Now, you could make a case for running a Choice Scarf instead on Mamoswine, but Dragapult and Slower is still where you're hitting with that Choice Scarf. So the nice thing here is we're just going to cut our losses. We're going to increase our speed a little bit more. We'll have to rely on Tailwind support, but we don't have to worry about locking ourselves into Trailblaze to increase our speed, and plus, blocking ourselves into that means we can't take advantage of Mamoswine's raw coverage. So having that choice band there just increases our attack even further. We could make a case, though, instead of running Jolly to run Adamant. That would bring us up to 200 attack. That's a relatively respectable number to have for the choice band. So you could make that case. Additionally, too, if you don't like the idea of being locked into a move, what you could do is you could take the choice band out and run the assault vest. You would get a 50% special defense boost, which could be nice. You are limited to only running damaging moves, but this does open up the door if you wanted to run Trailblaze as well. So you could potentially take out Ice Shard and then run Trailblaze. Now you have the ability to increase your speed while doing just raw amounts of damage. Now, you could do that with a Adamant or Jolly Nature at that point. So finally, let's talk about our third set, and this is a loaded dice set. So one beautiful thing about Mamoswine is you don't necessarily have to rely on Icicle Crash for your main ice-type damage. You could run Icicle Spear. So Icicle Spear, base 25 power, that hits 2 to 5 times. Loaded dice is going to make sure that hits a minimum of 4, meaning you have a base 100 stab ice type move at your disposal. A nice other thing too that you have is you have Rock Blast. So if you're putting 2 of your 4 moves as multi-striking moves, you could definitely justify running the loaded dice, because now you're not completely wasting your item slot. You don't have to worry about your attack getting lowered because of Oblivious from Intimidate, and if you wanted to go Tera Fire just to make sure that attack doesn't get lowered as well, you definitely have that as an other option. Ice, Rock, and Ground are a wonderful combination as well, because they also hit everything either neutrally or super effectively. So that's what I was thinking for the third set. We run the loaded dice, we have Rock Blast and Icicle Spear to take advantage of the loaded dice, and then we just have High Horsepower or Earthquake for raw ground type damage. And obviously the EVs are going to be really straightforward on this: max attack, max speed, Jolly, or Adamant Nature. Ideally, I like the idea of running the Jolly Nature, and then that way too you're going to outspeed a little bit more things under Tailwind as well. But that's my main thoughts on Mamoswine. Let me know what you guys think of it down in the comments below, and let's get the conversation going.